You've probably noticed that some people's deep wounds are hitting for hundreds of damage per tick, and I bet you're a little curious. Let's dive into how it works. Right here on my screen is a write-up by the guy who wrote the Warrior Sim. In case you want to read it for yourself, you can go to the link that's in the video and see exactly how this functions. I'm going to give my own example that I think covers a few more edge cases and makes it a little easier to understand. Right now, we're using the deep wounds from the Wrath client in Season of Discovery, and I'll explain what that means. So basically, deep wounds is an ability where when you crit, you do 60% of your weapon damage over 12 seconds. So basically, you get a crit. I'm using an asterisk, that's the symbol in the logs. Let's say your weapon damage is equal to 100. So now you are going to get 4 ticks of 15 damage from deep wounds. Now, previously, the way that this would work in the last iteration of Classic is, let's say that you have this and then you get another crit right here between these 2 ticks. What would it do? Well, it would just reapply a stack at 60, which means that you would basically lose all of this damage because right from this point in time, you draw another 4 of these 15s. Want, and that's why deep wounds used to not do a ton of damage. But instead, in the Wrath client, it functions a little differently. So let's start from the top, so that way this makes sense. This is what's actually going on now. If you have 100 weapon damage and you get a crit, your deep wounds will, of course, tick for 15 each because it will be 60 divided by 4. What happens if you get a crit here? Well, what's going to happen is that the old deep wound stack, you can see, had 45 damage saved. So you're going to take 45 and you're going to add it to what the current deep wound stack should be. So let's assume you don't have any effects, and so it'd be another 60. And then you're going to divide this number by 4. So you get 105 over 4, or you get like stacks of 26. So right here, you have the 15, and then it was supposed to be a bunch of 15s after that, but instead we do this math. And we get, after this, we'll have 26, 26, 26, 26 if no other crits happen. But there's another part of deep wounds that is interesting. How does this work if you have a damage buff? Well, let's redo the math again. Let's say we had the same situation. You have these 15s ticking, and we're going to pretend that you have an imaginary damage buff to make the numbers easier. We're going to say 100% damage amplification is activated, and then you crit here. Well, what's going to happen? Well, remember, it's 100% damage amplification, so instead of adding a 60, you would add a 60 plus a 60, right? And then you still have the 45 that's here. So we're going to add that too. So we're say plus 45. And so what's this number going to be equal to? It's going to be 165. So far, this probably makes sense to you. Now, here's the part that is stupid. While you have your enrage effect up, it doesn't just amplify the damage on the incoming, like here where we get 2 60s. You also get to multiply it after calculating this number on the right. So instead of doing 165 over 4 ticks, we do 165 times 2 over 4 ticks. And so that would be half of 165 per tick. So it'd be like 82, 82, 82, 82. So you just went from, you had a stack of deep wounds up that were hitting for 15 each. You then turned on an enrage that doubled your damage. And even though your damage only doubled, when you crit, like the next second, the ticks go up 5x. Well, what would happen if, let's say, your enrage expired here? Yeah, let's say it expired here. So before the 4th tick. Well, you would just take the enrage off that last one. So it would hit for 41. Or if the enrage expired halfway through, then, you'd have 2 41s if it expired there instead. And that's all there really is to how the new deep wounds works. This is the reason why you'll see ludicrous numbers. Some of it is people using things like flagellation, and not a lot of people are doing that, but there are some people using flagellation. They have like a maybe minute and 15-second kill time on some of the bosses. They get it twice, and so what you'll see is early on the boss, like right when they pull, they're going to have wacky high deep wounds because the deep wound's going to tick for basically the damage amplification squared. because it double dips. So in the case of flagellation, you know, if it was a 20% effect, you'd actually get like a 44% effect. That's the reason you see these huge ramp ups, is because you just take your modifier and you square it, and that is how much it actually increases the DPS of Deep Wounds while it's up.